The ocean was calm that night, almost too calm. The stars above the Pacific looked like tiny sparks floating over an endless sheet of black glass. The crew of the USS Blackstar had grown used to the quiet hours, the slow hum of the engines, the faint vibration under their boots, and the low whisper of waves brushing against steel. But beneath that peaceful surface, everyone on board knew the truth. The calm never lasted long out here. For weeks, tension had been building in the South Pacific. Rumors spread through the naval channels, fleets moving, patrols disappearing, communication lines going dark. The Blackstar had been sent farther south than ever before, on what was officially called a recon and presence mission. Unofficially, everyone knew they were there to watch, to wait, and to be ready. The ship itself was unlike any other in the fleet. The Blackstar was a next-generation destroyer, sleek, quiet, and built for stealth. Its outer hull absorbed radar signals, and its weapon systems were hidden until the moment of action. But technology wasn't what made the Blackstar special. It was the people on board, a small crew that had trained together for years, through long nights, rough seas, and endless drills. The captain stood on the bridge, looking out at the dark water through the wide glass windows. He wasn't the kind of man who talked much. He didn't need to. His calm presence was enough to keep the crew focused. Most of them trusted him completely, though few had ever seen him smile. They called him the Old Man not because of his age, but because of his steady, unshakable nature. That night, he felt something in his gut, a tension like the sea was holding its breath. Down in the control room, the radar officer sat hunched over a glowing screen, watching small dots that represented the world beyond. He sipped cold coffee, trying to stay sharp. "Still clear," he whispered to himself, tapping a few keys. The sound of soft beeps and humming electronics filled the air. Across the deck, sailors went about their nightly routines, checking equipment, cleaning instruments, logging readings. There was a rhythm to ship life, a cycle of repetition that brought comfort in the middle of nowhere. But lately the crew had stopped laughing as much. The music that once played softly in the mess hall had gone silent. Everyone felt it, something was coming. Around midnight, the first sign appeared. The communications officer frowned as her screen flickered. A static noise broke through the radio channel, as sharp, high-pitched, and sudden. She adjusted the knobs, checked the frequencies, and tried again. "Nothing but static. Interference?" she asked quietly. The tech beside her shrugged. "Could be the weather," he said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. There was no storm, no clouds, no lightning in sight. Just silence and that thin hiss on the radio. By dawn, word had spread through the ship. Some said another fleet was on the move. Others claimed it was just a systems glitch. But the captain didn't believe in coincidences. He ordered the crew to maintain radio silence and stay on full watch. That morning, the ocean stretched out in every direction, bright and endless. The sunrise painted the sky orange and gold. But there was something uneasy about that beauty, something that didn't sit right. In the galley, sailors talked in low voices over their breakfast trays. "Feels strange," one of them muttered. "Like the sea's hiding something." Another nodded, his spoon clinking softly against his bowl. "We've been lucky so far. Maybe too lucky." They laughed a little, but it didn't sound real. Laughter on a warship always carried a nervous edge, like it might vanish at any second. At 0900 hours, the captain called a briefing in the operations room. The walls glowed with digital maps and sonar projections. Lines of data scrolled across the screens. The room was quiet except for the soft buzz of electronics. He stood at the center, hands behind his back. His voice was steady. "Intelligence confirms increased movement near our sector. Multiple unidentified vessels have been spotted within 300 nautical miles. We don't know who they belong to yet, but we're assuming the worst." The officers exchanged glances. Nobody spoke. He continued, "Our orders are to observe, stay hidden, and prepare for contact if necessary. I don't want anyone taking chances. If something moves out there, I want to know before it knows us." The words hung heavy in the air. Everyone understood what they meant. Observation could turn into engagement in seconds. Out here, a single mistake could cost hundreds of lives. Hours passed. The ship moved slowly through the open sea, silent except for the soft churn of engines below deck. The crew worked in shifts, checking sonar, maintaining systems, scanning the horizon through binoculars. Each man and woman aboard could feel the weight of what might come next. By nightfall, clouds rolled in, covering the stars. The sea grew restless. Wind pressed against the hull and waves rose higher. Inside, the lights dimmed to red, night operations mode. The control room was filled with faces lit by red glow and computer screens. Eyes were tired but alert. The radar operator leaned forward, squinting. For a moment he thought he saw something, a faint blip, there and gone again. He adjusted the filters, tapped the screen, waited. Nothing. He leaned back, exhaled, and rubbed his eyes. But then the blip appeared again, closer this time. "Captain," he said, voice sharp now. "Possible contact bearing 275, distance unknown. Could be small craft. Could be a reflection." The captain stepped forward without a word, eyes fixed on the screen. "Verify," he said. They ran diagnostics. The blip vanished again, then reappeared, stronger. Another appeared beside it. Then a third. The captain's jaw tightened.
"Maintain course," he ordered quietly.
No lights. No transmissions. Let's see what they do. The next hour felt like a lifetime. The contacts moved slowly, keeping their distance. Then, just as suddenly, they faded from the radar altogether. The crew sat in tense silence. The air felt heavy, like everyone was waiting for something unseen. When the contacts didn't return, a few tried to relax, convincing themselves it was nothing. Maybe a glitch, maybe a school of large fish, maybe even reflections off the clouds. But the captain didn't move. He stood there watching the empty radar, long after the others had returned to their duties. Later that night, a young sailor stood alone on the observation deck, staring out into the dark. The wind carried the smell of salt and oil. The sea stretched endlessly, silent except for the low hum of the ship. He thought about his family back home, about how far away they were, about how small this giant ship felt in the middle of nowhere. Suddenly, he saw a faint flash on the horizon, so like lightning, but too quick, too clean. He blinked. It was gone, he reported it, and soon the officers were back at their stations. The radar was still clear. No sign of anything. But the flash had been real. They all knew it. The captain finally broke the silence. "Mark the coordinates," he said. "We'll investigate at first light." When the shift changed, the crew moved quietly through the narrow hallways. Some tried to rest. Others sat in the mess hall staring at cold cups of coffee. The tension never left. Even the engine noise sounded different. Lower, uneasy. At 0400 hours, a sudden alarm pierced the silence, just for a second, before cutting off. The radar screen had flickered again. The same blips, closer, moving fast. Within seconds, the ship came alive. Red lights flashed. Boots pounded across metal floors. Orders echoed through the halls. The calm ocean had turned into a battlefield waiting to happen. "Battle stations," the captain said. His voice was calm but firm. "No one panics. We stay sharp." On the main deck, sailors took their positions. The massive guns began to rotate quietly like sleeping giants waking up. The crew didn't know if they would fire tonight, but they were ready. The sea around them was pitch black. The only light came from the ship itself, dim and red, glowing faintly like an ember in the darkness. Every eye was on the radar screen, waiting. Then, without warning, the radar went dark. The control room filled with static. The sound was harsh, constant, a noise that cut through the room like a blade. "Jamming signal," someone said. "They're trying to blind us." The captain nodded slowly. "So it begins," he whispered. And just like that, the USS Blackstar, the silent shadow of the Pacific, knew it had been found. The calm was over. The ocean, once peaceful and endless, now felt like a trap. Every wave, every sound, every flicker of light in the distance could mean danger. But inside the ship there was no panic and only focus. The crew had waited for this moment, trained for it, lived for it. Whatever was coming, they were ready to face it together. Because on the open sea, far from home and safety, there was no one else coming to help. The Blackstar would have to stand on its own. The sky was still dark when the first sound came, a low, distant rumble that didn't belong to the sea. It rolled across the water like thunder, but there were no clouds above. The crew of the Blackstar had barely rested. Most were already awake, sitting at their posts or walking the narrow corridors with tired eyes and steady steps. Everyone knew what that sound meant, even before the alarms confirmed it. In the control room, lights flashed back to life. The radar operator stared at his screen, heart racing. The strange blips had returned, but this time they were clear, strong, and moving fast. Multiple contacts approaching, he said quietly, his voice breaking the heavy silence. No one needed to say the word enemy. It hung in the air by itself. The captain stepped forward, calm as always. All hands, battle stations, he said, and his voice carried through every hallway of the ship. Within seconds, the ship transformed. The quiet routine of the night vanished, replaced by quick footsteps, sharp commands, and the mechanical clatter of weapons systems activating. The sound of boots on steel filled the decks as the crew moved with practiced precision. Every person on board knew their place. No one shouted. No one panicked. Training took over, muscle memory guiding them through fear. The bridge glowed in red light. Officers read numbers, confirmed bearings, and exchanged short sentences like clockwork. The ship's AI, known as Erebus, spoke in a calm, steady tone, reporting data in seconds. Wind speed, distance, movement patterns. But behind all the technology, it was still people making the choices. Machines could calculate. Only humans could decide. Contacts confirmed at 40 miles and closing, said one of the officers. The captain gave a single nod. Maintain radar silence. No engagement yet, they waited. The hum of the engine seemed louder than usual. Every eye was on the screen as the dots drew closer, moving in a wide curve that suggested coordination. Formation flying. Whoever they were, they knew what they were doing. The radar officer adjusted his filters again. Sir, they're not broadcasting identification codes, that was it. The unspoken line had been crossed. Prepared defense systems, the captain said. All across the ship, weapon mounts turned silently. Missile hatches opened with a low hiss. Deep inside the destroyer, a low thump echoed as the railgun began charging, its magnetic coils humming faintly. The air inside the ship seemed to tighten as if the whole vessel was holding its breath. Then the radar screen lit up again, this time with new signals. Fast-moving projectiles. The enemy had fired first. Missiles inbound, someone shouted. No one had to be told twice. Alarms blared through the corridors. The sound wasn't loud enough to hide the fear, but it also gave the crew something to focus on. Action replaced uncertainty. The captain gave the order. Evasive maneuvers. Deploy countermeasures. Instantly, the Blackstar came alive. Flares burst into the sky like comets, confusing enemy sensors. Decoy drones launched from the rear deck, scattering in different directions. The destroyer tilted sharply to one side as its engines pushed hard to evade the incoming fire. Inside, the crew braced themselves. The noise was deafening. Alarms, machinery, metal groaning under stress. Somewhere deep in the hull, water slammed against steel as the ship turned sharply through rough waves. The first missile streaked across the sky, missing the ship by a few hundred meters. The explosion lit up the night like a white sun. The shockwave rattled every bolt, every door, every nerve on board. A second missile followed. Closer this time, its trail cutting a bright scar across the dark horizon. Targeting systems online, came a voice through the comms. Permission to engage. The captain didn't hesitate. Engage! The railgun roared, a sound unlike anything the crew had ever heard. It wasn't like a normal cannon. It was deeper, faster, a sharp crack that seemed to tear the air apart. The weapon fired a hyper-velocity round that crossed miles in seconds, intercepting the incoming missile mid-flight. The explosion was distant but clear, a small orange flower blooming against the dark sky. Cheers rose in the control room, but the captain's face stayed firm. Don't celebrate yet, he said quietly. They're testing us, he was right. Within minutes, more signals appeared. A swarm of smaller, faster drones moving low over the water. The enemy had switched tactics, trying to overwhelm the Blackstar's defenses. Activate close-range batteries, the captain ordered. Erebus, assist with targeting. The AI's calm voice filled the room. Tracking 24 targets, prioritizing based on trajectory. The ship's defense turrets turned in unison. Beams of red tracer fire swept across the sea, hitting targets that were barely visible. The crew could feel the vibrations through the floor as each gun fired in rhythm. The ocean lit up with flashes and splashes. Drones exploded one by one, leaving trails of smoke behind. Then came a sharp jolt, not from outside but inside. Engine room reporting damage to the aft stabilizer, came a voice over the intercom. The ship tilted slightly to one side. Crew members grabbed onto nearby rails to keep balance. Any casualties? The captain asked. Minor injuries. Fire contained. He exhaled slowly, then gave another order. Send a repair team. Keep us steady. Below deck, sailors ran through narrow hallways carrying fire gear and tools. The smell of burning insulation filled the air. Sparks rained from the ceiling as they worked to patch the damage. One of them crawled through the smoke to reach a control panel that had half melted from the heat. His hands were shaking, but he kept working, twisting valves and reconnecting power lines. The noise was unbearable: alarms, engines, the thud of distant explosions. But giving up wasn't an option. Back on the bridge, the situation grew worse. More enemy signatures appeared, this time farther away, forming a wide arc. It was no longer a skirmish. It was an ambush. "Multiple ships detected, at least 6, said the radar officer. "They're closing in." The captain looked out through the forward glass. He couldn't see them yet, but he could feel them. He turned to his officers. "Ready all weapons. Fire on my command." For a few long moments, no one spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the ship's systems and the distant rumble of thunder that wasn't thunder. Then the first enemy ship broke the horizon, a dark silhouette against the faint morning light. "Enemy vessel confirmed," someone said. "Lock on," the captain replied. His voice was quiet but steady. "Let's make this count." The Blackstar fired again, railgun, missiles, close-range batteries, all working in perfect coordination. The recoil shook the deck. The ship's hull glowed faintly from heat. Out on the water, the first enemy vessel erupted in a burst of fire, smoke rising into the sky. The crew didn't cheer this time. There was no time. More missiles came. Some were intercepted mid-air. Others exploded harmlessly in the water. One struck close enough to send a spray of boiling seawater over the forward deck. The shock knocked 2 sailors off their feet, but they pulled themselves up instantly, soaked and shaken but alive. The captain watched as the radar filled with chaos, dots appearing, disappearing, replaced by new ones. The enemy wasn't retreating. They were regrouping. "Erebus, analyze enemy formation," he said. "Pattern suggest coordinated assault," replied the AI. "Recommend repositioning to flank." He nodded once. "Helm, bring us about." 20 degrees starboard. Let's see if they follow." The Blackstar turned smoothly, cutting through the waves like a blade. As it moved, the enemy's radar lost its lock for a few precious seconds. That was all they needed. Another missile volley fired from the destroyer's deck, disappearing into the distance. Moments later, another explosion rippled across the horizon. The crew's exhaustion didn't show. Their faces were tense but focused, eyes darting between screens and instruments, ears tuned to the captain's calm voice. Every second mattered. Every choice could decide whether they lived or died. Then suddenly the radar went quiet. No more signals. No more incoming fire. The silence returned. For a moment, no one dared to breathe. The captain finally spoke. "Status report. All systems stable," came the reply. "Minimal damage. No further contacts." The crew began to exhale, slowly, carefully. The adrenaline still ran high, but the immediate danger had passed. The sun was rising now, casting a golden light across the sea. The smoke from the battle hung in the air, drifting slowly over the waves. The water shimmered with bits of debris, silent witnesses to what had just happened. On the deck, sailors stood watching the horizon. No one spoke. Some leaned against the rail, breathing deeply. Others just stared into the distance, knowing this was only the beginning. The captain looked around at his crew, tired, sweaty, covered in soot and seawater. But they were standing. They had survived the first test. "Good work," he said quietly. It wasn't a speech, just 3 words. But they meant everything. As the Blackstar sailed forward again, engines humming steadily, the crew began to reset systems and repair damage. The ship looked almost untouched from a distance, but every person on board knew how close they had come. The first contact had come and gone. But deep down, everyone understood. This wasn't the end of the fight, it was only the beginning. The morning light stretched over the Pacific like a thin sheet of gold. After the first exchange of fire, the sea seemed peaceful again, but the crew of the Blackstar knew better. Calm was a fragile illusion. Every ripple, every shadow on the horizon could hide danger. The ship itself seemed to hold its breath, groaning faintly as it cut through the waves. Inside, the crew worked quickly to assess damage. The aft stabilizer had taken the brunt of the attack, and several small fires had broken out. Smoke lingered in the corridors, and the smell of scorched metal and burnt wiring clung to everything. Sailors moved efficiently, following the routines drilled into them over years of training. Hands shook, hearts raced, but no one stopped. In the control room, the captain stood quietly, watching as systems flickered back to life. His eyes scanned the radar screen, noting the positions of the enemy vessels that had been detected. None were gone. They had retreated only to regroup, to plan their next strike. "We need to be ready for anything," he said, his voice calm but firm. "No assumptions. Watch everything. Trust nothing." The crew nodded silently. Words were few, but understanding was clear. They had trained for months, even years, for a situation like this, but nothing could fully prepare anyone for the real thing, the moment when a mistake could mean death. In the engine room, the repair team worked tirelessly. Sparks flew as broken panels were replaced, wires reconnected, and systems rebooted. One of the crew crawled through a tight hatch to reach a malfunctioning circuit. Sweat dripped from his forehead, mixing with the grime of the hull. Every second counted. The engines needed to be at full power, or evasive maneuvers would fail. Up on deck, lookouts scanned the horizon with binoculars. The rising sun caught the water at just the right angle, reflecting light in a way that made it nearly impossible to spot distant vessels. But trained eyes could detect the faintest movement. Small waves broke differently, shadows shifted, and shapes appeared just long enough to identify them as enemy craft. The first real decision came just before noon. The radar picked up fast-moving objects approaching from the northeast. Not slow, lumbering ships this time. Small, agile drones moving in coordinated patterns. They were testing the Blackstar, probing for weaknesses. "Prepare countermeasures," the captain ordered. "Don't wait for them to reach us." The crew sprang into action. Missile defense systems were activated, flares and electronic decoys launched. Turrets rotated, tracking multiple targets at once. The Blackstar shuddered as the first enemy projectile approached, then exploded harmlessly in the water. Another followed, intercepted by a laser cannon. The bridge crew's hands moved quickly over controls, eyes darting between multiple screens. Every movement, every second mattered. Below deck, a young sailor felt his heart pounding so loudly he could hear it over the hum of machinery. He had trained for this moment, but training could only take a person so far. Real combat was different. The stakes were higher, the fear sharper, and mistakes could not be undone. He glanced at his partner, who gave a small, tight smile. They would get through this together. Back on the bridge, the captain made a decision that could change everything. The enemy drones were numerous but small. They weren't expecting a direct counterattack. "Fire on my mark," he said. The Blackstar unleashed a combination of railgun fire and precision missiles. The first volley struck the drones mid-flight. Small explosions lit the sky above the ocean, leaving trails of smoke and burning debris. The ship rocked slightly from the recoil, but the crew didn't falter. Another wave of drones approached, faster and more aggressive this time. The AI calculated intercept paths instantly, directing turrets to new targets. Despite the chaos, there were moments of quiet bravery. A sailor had been knocked off balance by the first explosion, and without hesitation he scrambled to his station, ignoring cuts and bruises. Another had his headset damaged but continued communicating with the engine room using hand signals. Every person on board was doing more than their job. They were holding the ship together with sheer determination. The captain observed everything, making small adjustments to positioning, speed, and angle. His decisions were measured, precise. One wrong move could have allowed the enemy to exploit a weakness. He thought of the crew as he made each call. Every decision had to protect them. Not the ship, not the weapons, but the people. The battle continued for over an hour. Each wave of enemy drones became more coordinated, more aggressive. The crew grew tired, their muscles aching from constant vigilance. Sweat dripped from foreheads and the smell of smoke and oil lingered in the air. But no one stopped. Even when a second small missile struck near the forward deck, damaging a railing, the crew worked calmly, methodically, repairing it before it became a hazard. Then came the unexpected. The enemy had held back their largest weapon, a missile larger than anything the Blackstar had intercepted before. It appeared suddenly on the radar, moving fast and straight toward the ship. The control room went silent for a fraction of a second, long enough for every heartbeat to echo. The AI calculated intercept paths, but the captain knew technology alone couldn't save them. "Prepare evasive maneuvers," he shouted. The ship tilted sharply, engines roaring as it changed course. Flares and decoys were deployed. The missile streaked past, missing the hull by meters. The crew felt the wind from its close passage, and a collective sigh of relief filled the room. Even then, there was no celebration. Everyone knew it wasn't over. The enemy would regroup, and the battle could resume at any moment. The captain called a quick assessment. "Status report. Minor structural damage," the officer replied. "All systems operational. Crew accounted for with 3 minor injuries." He nodded, keeping his face calm. "Good, keep vigilance. This was only a probe. They will test us again." For the next few hours, the crew repaired damage, reloaded missiles, and recalibrated targeting systems. The ship moved steadily through the Pacific, still cloaked in its gray hull blending with the horizon. Outside, the ocean seemed calm again, but the memory of explosions, near misses, and flashing lights lingered. During a brief pause, some crew members allowed themselves a moment to catch their breath. One leaned against the rail on the deck, staring at the sun glittering across the waves. Another sat quietly, cleaning soot from her gloves. They spoke little, but shared glances that conveyed more than words. They had survived something terrifying together, and in that moment, they were not just sailors, they were a team, a family, united by the ship and the danger they faced. The captain walked through the control room, observing each officer. "Keep focus," he said simply. "We faced the first wave. There will be more, but we are ready. Stay sharp, trust each other, and stay alive." Even with his calm reassurance, the weight of responsibility was clear. Every decision he made affected hundreds of lives. Every maneuver could mean survival or disaster. And the crew understood that. They trusted him because he shared the burden without showing fear, because he treated them as more than soldiers. He treated them as people. As the day moved on, the Blackstar remained on high alert. The enemy was still out there, hidden among the waves and clouds. The crew maintained constant watch, scanning radar, peering through binoculars, checking weapons and engines. Every small sound, a splash, a shift of metal, a distant rumble, made hearts race. But through it all, no one panicked. They had survived the first wave. They could survive the next. Then just before sunset, a faint shadow appeared on the horizon. Not a missile, not a drone, but a larger silhouette, the shape of an enemy ship moving slowly, deliberately. It was a signal, a reminder that the real battle had only just begun. The captain didn't move immediately. He watched, measured, considered. He knew the crew would follow his lead. He knew every decision mattered, not just for the ship, but for the lives on board. "Prepare for the next engagement," he said at last. "And remember, no one fights alone. We are Blackstar. We survived together." The crew nodded silently, hearts steady, hands ready. The ocean stretched endlessly ahead, darkening with the setting sun. The next wave of danger was coming, but the Blackstar was ready. Its crew was ready, and whatever came, they would face it together. The first contact had been survived. The fight was only beginning. The sun had almost disappeared behind the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and deep red. The calm beauty of the evening was deceptive. Every sailor on the USS Blackstar knew it was only the quiet before the storm. The enemy ship spotted earlier was no longer a distant silhouette. It was closer now, creeping over the waves with deliberate precision. The captain's eyes remained steady on the radar screen, watching the slow, calculated movements of the vessel. "Distance closing rapidly," the radar officer reported, his voice low but tense. "Estimated approach in 15 minutes. The crew moved with quiet efficiency. Weapons were reloaded, turrets adjusted, and electronic countermeasures tested again. Every system was double-checked. Some sailors wiped the sweat from their faces and adjusted their gloves, hands still shaking slightly from the adrenaline earlier in the day. Fear was still there. It never fully left, but it had been replaced by focus. The captain stepped forward, placing his hands lightly on the console. "Prepare all systems for engagement. We don't wait for them to fire first this time. We take the initiative." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Taking the initiative meant risk. The enemy could be stronger than they expected, but hesitation could cost them even more. The crew nodded, understanding without needing more instructions. They had trained for this moment, and now it had arrived. The Blackstar shifted course, turning slightly to starboard to bring its railgun and missile systems into optimal position. The ship rolled gently on the waves, engines humming steadily. Outside, the water shimmered with the fading light, masking the danger that approached. The radar officer's eyes widened. Multiple small craft detected. They're flanking from the north and south. It's coordinated. They want to surround us, the captain didn't flinch. Steady, use their movement against them. Erebus, plot intercept paths for all targets. The AI voice responded calmly, almost eerily so. Calculating, paths established. Weapon systems online and synchronized. The crew held their positions, hands poised over controls, eyes scanning both screens and the horizon. There was no room for panic. Every second counted. The first wave came fast, small drones skimming low over the water, almost invisible in the dim light. They were designed to confuse, to draw attention, to test the Blackstar's defenses. But the crew was ready. Turrets rotated smoothly. Missiles launched with precision, and the railgun fired a sharp, blinding streak of light. Explosions lit the ocean as drones were destroyed mid-flight, sparks and smoke rising into the evening air. From the deck, sailors could see the flashes reflected in the waves. Each explosion was a reminder of what was at stake. One miscalculation, one missed shot could have been disastrous. They kept moving, working in rhythm with the ship, breathing in time with each pulse of the engines. Then the second wave arrived. Faster, larger, more numerous. Missiles streaked toward the Blackstar like streaks of silver fire. The crew reacted immediately. Flares burst into the sky, drones launched as decoys, and evasive maneuvers were executed flawlessly. Some missiles exploded harmlessly in the water. Others were destroyed in mid-air by the railgun. The captain's voice cut through the controlled chaos. Focus on the largest threats first. Keep the smaller ones contained. We can't be overwhelmed. Even with his calm orders, the crew felt the tension like a physical weight. The ship shuddered with each volley, metal groaning under stress, water splashing against the hull in angry waves. Below deck, engineers worked furiously to ensure that propulsion and power systems stayed online. Sparks flew as broken panels were replaced, hoses repaired, and valves adjusted. Hands moved with precision, sweat and grime covering them, but no one stopped. On the bridge, a young officer adjusted a targeting system, glancing quickly at the crew in the turret below. He could see their focused faces through the observation windows, each person performing flawlessly under immense pressure. A deep respect ran through him for every member of the team. They were more than colleagues. They were people putting their lives on the line for each other and for everyone back home. The enemy's larger ship was now closer, massive and imposing, cutting through the water with deliberate force. Its hull glimmered faintly in the last light of the day. The crew of the Blackstar could feel its presence in every vibration of the ship, in every beep of the radar, in every anxious heartbeat. The captain studied the vessel carefully. "They're counting on intimidation," he said quietly. "We don't give it to them. Prepare a coordinated strike. Timing is everything." The crew nodded. Turrets rotated, missiles locked on, railgun charged. Every system was synchronized perfectly, ready to respond at the exact moment. Below deck, engineers monitored power levels, ensuring that every shot could be fired without failure. Then, just as the enemy ship fired its first salvo of missiles, the Blackstar struck back. Missiles and railgun rounds launched in rapid succession, a blur of light and sound that tore through the sky and sea. Explosions erupted across the enemy deck, sending plumes of smoke and debris high into the air. The first strike had landed. The crew didn't celebrate. There was no time. Another wave of missiles followed almost immediately, this time targeting the Blackstar directly. The ship tilted sharply as evasive maneuvers were executed. Flares burst into the sky, decoys scattered, and defensive weapons intercepted the threats one by one. Inside, sailors gripped their stations, knuckles white, hearts pounding. Sweat streamed down their faces as they maintained focus, firing weapons, monitoring systems, and making split-second calculations. A single error could mean disaster. But despite the danger, no one faltered. The captain remained calm, issuing precise commands. "Railgun ready on the largest threat. Fire on my mark. Missiles stay locked on secondary targets. Evasive maneuvers continue. Helm maintain speed and angle." The Blackstar fired again. A railgun round streaked through the sky, striking the enemy vessel with a deafening impact. The explosion sent a shockwave that rocked the water around them. Another missile hit the enemy deck, igniting fuel and sending flames and smoke into the sky. The crew felt a brief, tense silence as they watched the results. The enemy ship shuddered but did not sink. They were still a threat. The captain did not hesitate. "Keep firing. Don't let them recover. Stay coordinated. Watch each other's sectors. Cover every angle. For the next hour, the battle continued in a blur of action. Missiles fired, drones exploded, railgun rounds streaked through the sky. The Blackstar moved gracefully, dodging attacks while striking back with precision. Every person on board worked in perfect synchrony, relying on training, instincts, and each other. In the engine room, one engineer patched a damaged power conduit while another monitored pressure systems. Sparks flew, metal groaned, and water hissed from cooling vents, but they kept working. Each action, no matter how small, contributed to the ship's survival. On deck, sailors loaded missiles manually when the automated systems failed temporarily. Their hands were blistered, their uniforms soaked with sweat and seawater, but they did not stop. Every missile loaded, every turret adjusted, every calculation made could mean the difference between life and death. By the time darkness fully fell, the enemy ship had suffered heavy damage. Fires burned across its deck, smoke rising high into the night. Its drones were mostly destroyed, and its missiles had been depleted. The Blackstar had pushed it back, not destroyed it completely, but enough to prevent it from continuing its attack. The captain allowed himself a small sigh of relief. "Status report," he said. "All systems operational," the officer replied. "Damage minor, crew accounted for. Enemy force weakened, retreating." The crew allowed themselves a brief moment to relax. Some leaned against the rail, breathing deeply. Others wiped sweat and grime from their faces. There were no celebrations, only quiet relief. They had survived, and they had won this round. The Blackstar moved steadily through the night, engines humming softly. Outside, the sea reflected the stars, calm once more. But everyone knew it was temporary. The battle had not ended. The enemy would regroup, and the next engagement could be even more dangerous. The captain walked through the control room, observing each officer. "Good work today," he said quietly. "We have proven ourselves capable, but we remain vigilant. The fight is not over. Stay ready and trust each other. We survive together." The crew nodded, returning to their stations, minds alert and bodies ready. They had faced the first serious threat and come out alive. They had defended their ship, their comrades, and the mission. Above them, the stars shone brightly over the Pacific, a silent witness to courage, teamwork, and determination. And as the USS Blackstar sailed on into the night, every person on board understood one simple truth. They were stronger together, and no enemy could break that unity. The counterstrike had succeeded. The enemy had been weakened, and the Blackstar had proven its strength. But the war was far from over, and the crew knew they would face whatever came next, together. The night over the Pacific was thick and black, but the Blackstar moved through it like a ghost. The air on the deck was cool, tinged with the smell of salt and smoke from earlier explosions. Every sailor knew the fight wasn't over. The enemy ship had been damaged, yes, but it was still out there somewhere, and more reinforcements could be on the way. Inside the control room, the captain stared at the radar. Dots appeared and disappeared, sometimes in clusters, sometimes alone. Each movement carried potential danger. Every single contact had to be watched, assessed, and dealt with immediately. The first signs of the next wave came quietly. Small blips appeared at the edge of the radar range. Drones, dozens of them, approaching fast and low over the water. Their patterns were more organized than before, testing the Blackstar's defenses again. The crew held their breath as the captain spoke. "Ready all defensive systems. This time we control the pace." No surprises. The crew moved like a single organism. Turrets rotated, missiles were prepared, flares loaded, decoy drones deployed. The Blackstar itself shifted, engines humming louder, cutting through waves at a sharper angle. The ocean seemed alive with tension, every ripple hiding potential danger. The first wave of drones arrived, small and fast, moving almost in unison. Laser cannons fired, intercepting the drones mid-air. The railgun roared, sending one streaking through the night sky, hitting another cluster. Explosions lit up the darkness, briefly illuminating the waves below. Below deck, engineers monitored power systems, making sure every shot could be fired. The heat from the engines pressed through the walls, and the smell of metal and oil filled the cramped corridors. One engineer wiped his brow, sweat dripping into his eyes, but his hands never stopped moving. Every connection mattered. Every adjustment could mean survival. The second wave came faster and closer. This time, missiles streaked toward the Blackstar with deadly precision. The crew reacted instantly. Flares and decoys burst into the air, turning incoming projectiles off course. Turrets rotated with pinpoint accuracy. The ship tilted sharply to avoid the worst of the blasts, water slapping against the hull. Missile intercepted, one officer reported. 2 more inbound. The captain's eyes didn't leave the radar. Keep tracking. Do not assume anything. Engage when necessary. Another missile hit the water close to the hull, sending a spray over the deck. Sailors held onto rails, steadying themselves as the ship rocked. One looked at the young officer beside him and gave a small nod. A silent acknowledgement. They were in this together. The Blackstar fired again, precision strikes aimed at the larger enemy ship now closer on the horizon. The railgun tore through the night, hitting a critical section. Flames and smoke erupted from the deck. The enemy staggered, but it was far from defeated. The captain knew this was the moment to act decisively. He gave the order, full counterattack. Target the enemy formation. Focus on disabling their offensive capabilities first. The crew responded immediately. Missiles were launched in rapid succession. Turrets fired at multiple targets, and the railgun prepared another shot. The ship moved gracefully, dodging attacks while striking with lethal accuracy. Outside, the ocean seemed to explode with light and sound. Every missile that hit sent water spraying into the air. Every explosion shook the hull, making the crew grip rails and consoles. Sparks flew from damaged panels, and the smell of smoke and burnt metal filled the corridors, but no one stopped. In the engine room, one engineer crawled through a narrow space to reconnect a power line that had been damaged earlier. Sparks flew dangerously close to his hands, but he ignored them. Each second counted. The engines needed full power for the ship to maintain speed and maneuverability. On deck, sailors rotated missiles manually when automated systems jammed. Their hands were blistered and red, their uniforms soaked with sweat and seawater, but they continued. Every small action mattered. Every shot fired could save lives. The enemy fired back, launching more drones and missiles. One missile hit near the forward deck, damaging a railing and spraying water across the crew. Another barely missed a turret, sending a shockwave through the hull. But the Blackstar's defenses held. Every system was pushed to its limits, and yet the crew worked as if nothing could stop them. The captain remained calm, issuing orders with precision. Railgun ready. Fire on the largest target. Missiles focus on secondary threats. Evasive maneuvers continue. The railgun fired, a streak of blinding light tearing through the darkness. The impact hit the enemy ship's engine section, causing sparks and flames to shoot into the sky. Another missile hit the command bridge of the enemy vessel. The Blackstar had now gained the upper hand. Still, the battle was far from over. Drones approached from unexpected angles, testing the ship's defenses. The crew moved in perfect synchrony, trusting their training and each other. Every eye was on the radar, every hand on the controls, every heartbeat in rhythm with the tension of the moment. Then came a pause. The enemy's attack slowed. Their drones were destroyed or disabled. The larger ship staggered, struggling to maintain formation. The Blackstar had forced them to retreat, at least temporarily. The captain allowed himself a small, controlled sigh. "Status report," he said. "All systems operational," came the reply. "Minor damage only. Crew accounted for. Enemy is retreating." The crew released a breath they hadn't realized they were holding. Some leaned against the rail, catching their breath. Others cleaned soot from their gloves and uniforms. The silence was not peaceful, but it was a brief moment to recover. The Blackstar moved steadily through the waves, engines humming. The night sky reflected off the water, calm once more, but everyone knew it was temporary. The enemy would return. The fight was not over. The captain walked through the control room, observing his crew. Each officer and sailor was focused, alert, and ready. "Good work," he said quietly. "You have proven what we can do together. But we remain vigilant. We cannot underestimate them. Stay sharp." Below deck, engineers continued repairs, ensuring the ship was ready for whatever came next. Sailors rotated, checked systems, and monitored the horizon. They shared quiet nods, small gestures that said more than words. Each person on board knew their role, trusted the others, and understood that survival depended on teamwork, courage, and calm decision-making. Above deck, the ocean reflected the stars and the distant lights of fires on the horizon from the enemy ship. The smell of salt, smoke, and hot metal lingered in the air. The crew felt the weight of what they had accomplished, but also the weight of what was to come. They were alive, yes, but the battle had tested them, pushed them to their limits, and reminded them of the fragility of life at sea. The captain returned to the bridge, standing quietly as he watched the radar. He knew that the enemy would regroup, perhaps call reinforcements and try again. But he also knew the Blackstar was strong, and its crew was stronger. They had faced danger, chaos, and fear, and had come through alive. Together. He looked at his crew, tired but determined. "Rest when you can," he said. "Stay ready. The next wave may come at any moment. We survive together. We fight together. And we will prevail." The crew nodded, returning to their stations with renewed focus. They were ready. They were the Blackstar, and they would face whatever came next, side by side, as a team. The night was quiet now, but it was the quiet before the storm. The enemy had been forced back, but they were not defeated. The Blackstar had proven its strength. Its crew had proven their courage, and the fight would continue. The first part of victory had been achieved. The next part would be even more dangerous. And the crew knew that they would face it together no matter what. The counterattack had been successful. The enemy had been weakened. The Blackstar had stood tall. But the war was far from over, and the crew of the Blackstar understood one thing clearly. Survival depended on unity, courage, and the refusal to give up. The ocean stretched endlessly, dark and quiet. The Blackstar sailed on, ready for whatever came next. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a pale glow across the restless sea. The night had been long and full of danger, but the crew of the USS Blackstar had survived. Every person on board had faced fear, chaos, and the unknown, and they had held together. Yet there was no time to relax. The enemy was not gone. They were regrouping, repairing, and preparing for a final strike. Inside the control room, the captain leaned over the radar console, eyes scanning every blip, every movement. The crew around him was tense but focused. They had grown stronger with every encounter, more confident and more determined. But even the strongest resolve had to be tempered with caution. The final battle was approaching, and mistakes could cost lives. Enemy ship confirmed at 30 miles, the radar officer reported. Multiple smaller craft detected. They are forming a coordinated assault. The captain nodded. This is it. Prepare for the final engagement. Weapons ready, defensive systems online, and keep the crew sharp. Every second counts. The crew sprang into action. Turrets rotated smoothly. Missiles locked onto targets, and the railgun charged for the first strike. Engineers checked propulsion systems, power conduits, and targeting arrays. Sailors moved across the decks, double-checking flares, decoys, and communication lines. The Blackstar was alive, a perfectly tuned machine guided by the hands, hearts, and minds of its crew. Outside, the ocean looked deceptively calm. Waves lapped against the hull as if nothing had happened, but the water hid danger, shadows moving beneath the surface, and the enemy ready to strike. The sky above darkened slightly as clouds moved in, adding an ominous tone to the approaching confrontation. The first wave of enemy drones appeared suddenly, cutting across the horizon like a swarm of insects. They moved fast, low, and coordinated, designed to overwhelm the Blackstar's defenses. The captain's voice was calm but commanding. Engage all defenses. Focus on coordination. Stay precise. Turrets rotated and fired, missiles streaked through the sky, and the railgun sent its first shot tearing toward the enemy formation. Explosions erupted, sending sparks and smoke into the early morning light. The ocean reflected the flashes, making the scene look like a storm of fire and water. Below deck, engineers worked furiously to keep power and propulsion stable. Sparks flew from damaged panels and hoses hissed from cooling systems under strain. Sweat dripped from brows and muscles ached, but no one stopped. Each repair, each adjustment kept the Blackstar alive and fighting. On the deck, sailors rotated missiles manually when the automated systems jammed. Blisters, cuts, and bruises were ignored as they continued their work. Every shot fired, every turret adjusted, every flare deployed could save lives and tip the battle in their favor. The enemy's larger ship was now visible, a dark silhouette against the morning sky. It had survived previous attacks but was heavily damaged. Fires burned along its deck and smoke curled into the sky. Its drones, however, were still numerous and coordinated. The captain studied the enemy vessel carefully. They are relying on numbers, not strategy, he said quietly. We need to exploit their weaknesses. Disable them quickly. The Blackstar moved deliberately, cutting through the waves with grace and power. The ship tilted slightly to evade incoming missiles while simultaneously firing volleys at the enemy. The railgun unleashed another shot, striking the enemy's central hull. Flames and smoke erupted, illuminating the ocean in a blinding display. The enemy launched counterattacks, missiles streaking toward the Blackstar with deadly precision. Flares and decoys erupted into the sky. Missiles intercepted. Turrets rotated to cover new angles. The crew moved in perfect rhythm. Every action coordinated, every decision precise. Fear was present, but it was channeled into focus, into action, into survival. In the control room, the captain issued orders with calm precision. Railgun ready for main target. Missiles engage secondary threats. Evasive maneuvers continue. Keep pressure constant, the Blackstar fired again. The railgun struck the enemy's engine section, causing sparks, flames, and an enormous shockwave. A missile hit the enemy bridge, disrupting their command. The larger vessel staggered, and its drones fell from the sky, many destroyed in mid-air. The Blackstar had the upper hand, but the enemy was not finished. They had one final wave, faster drones, guided missiles, and a secondary ship emerging from the mist on the horizon. The crew braced for the escalation. "Focus on survival first," the captain said, "then counterattack. We finish this now." The Blackstar moved aggressively, dodging missiles while returning fire with lethal accuracy. Turrets and railgun rounds tore through the enemy formation, explosions lighting up the sea and sky. Drones were destroyed in clusters, their fragments raining down into the water. The enemy's secondary ship fired back, but the Blackstar's evasive maneuvers and defensive systems held strong. Below deck, engineers and technicians were pushed to the limit. Systems were operating beyond normal capacity. Sparks flew, machinery groaned, and sweat poured from every face. Yet they continued, each adjustment, each repair, ensuring that the ship could stay in the fight. On deck, sailors coordinated manually, loading missiles, adjusting turrets, monitoring countermeasures. Their uniforms were soaked, their hands raw, their faces streaked with soot and sweat. But no one wavered. Every person knew the stakes. Every action mattered. The captain observed everything, calculating, anticipating, making decisions that would decide the battle. All weapons fire on central target. Secondary targets managed automatically. Full power to propulsion. The Blackstar surged forward, engines humming like a living creature. Missiles hit the enemy's main hull in rapid succession. The railgun fired, tearing through the superstructure. Fires and smoke erupted. Waves of destruction rippling across the enemy deck. Their drones were annihilated. Missiles destroyed midair, and their secondary ship staggered. The enemy attempted to retreat, but the Blackstar pursued. Another railgun round struck the engine section, disabling it. The secondary ship attempted one last strike, but it too was intercepted. The ocean erupted in explosions, fire, and smoke. Finally, silence. The enemy fleet was destroyed or incapacitated. Fires burned across the remaining wreckage and smoke rose high into the sky. The Blackstar floated among the debris, engines humming steadily, unscathed but for minor damage. The crew allowed themselves a collective breath, some sinking to the deck, some leaning against rails, all exhausted but alive. They had faced overwhelming odds, fought with courage and skill, and survived. They had entered the fight and emerged victorious. The captain walked through the control room, observing each officer and sailor. "This is victory," he said quietly. "We faced fear, chaos, and danger, and we held together. Each of you has proven what it means to be Blackstar. Remember this moment. Remember your strength. But stay vigilant. We must always be ready." The crew nodded, some smiling faintly, others silent, processing the enormity of what had just happened. They had survived something few could imagine, yet they remained humble. They had relied on each other, trusted each other, and that trust had carried them through. The Blackstar sailed steadily through the morning light, engines humming steadily. The ocean reflected the sun, calm once more. But the crew knew that this calm was hard-earned and fragile. They had survived the fight, but the lessons of courage, teamwork, and vigilance would remain with them forever. On deck, sailors looked out at the horizon, seeing the remnants of the enemy fleet burning and sinking into the sea. They shared silent glances, nods, and small gestures of acknowledgement. Each person understood that they had been part of something extraordinary. They had faced danger, stood together, and prevailed. Below deck, engineers made final checks on the systems, ensuring the Blackstar was fully operational. Sailors repaired minor damage, cleaned equipment, and prepared for any remaining threats. Even in victory, they remained disciplined, aware that survival demanded constant readiness. The captain stood on the bridge, looking out at the calm sea, reflecting on the journey. He knew the Blackstar had entered the fight at the right moment, with the right crew, and that their unity, skill, and courage had made all the difference. He turned to the crew around him. Today we proved that no enemy can break us when we stand together. The Blackstar has entered the fight and the enemy has not recovered. But remember this, we survive because of each other. Never forget that. The crew nodded, pride and relief mingling with exhaustion. They had entered history not through luck, but through determination, teamwork, and bravery. They had faced the storm and emerged victorious. As the Blackstar sailed into open waters, the ocean calm, the morning sun fully risen, the crew allowed themselves to finally relax. The battle was over. The enemy had been defeated, and the USS Blackstar, with its crew united, had proven that courage, skill, and teamwork could overcome even the greatest threats. They had entered the fight, and the enemy had never recovered. The Blackstar moved forward, a symbol of resilience, courage, and unbroken spirit. Its crew ready for whatever challenges the future might bring. Together they had survived. Together they had triumphed. And together they would face whatever came next.